For this assignment, we're going to be learning about op art. Op art began in the 1960s, and it's short for optical art because it focuses on making optical illusions, something to fool the eye. So like you can see in this piece right here, it looks like the guy is walking up the stairs, but then he ends up in the exact same spot. Same with the dude that's walking down the stairs. Somehow he keeps walking down, but he still ends up in the exact same spot. So some famous op artists are Victor Vasarely, Bridget Riley, and MC Escher. These are like the grandfather, the grandmother, and the most famous op artist. Here are some different pieces of op art. Now, this one right here kind of looks like it's moving, but it's not. It's actually a print. There is no movement in this except for my mouse. But the way that the artist used the lines and the directions and the colors makes your brain think, oh, those circles are moving. Same with this one. It's a flat picture, but because of the way that they curve the lines and there's the shadows and the highlights, it makes you think that it's like popping out at you. And then with this sculpture right here, yes, it's a sculpture, but you can see on the side here, it's pretty flat. It's only 3 thick. Because they have diamonds that are different colors here, that changes how your mind sees it. So it kind of looks like there's a cube stuck to a cube, stuck to more cubes, but it's actually just a flat surface with diamonds attached to it. So we're going to use that as our jumping off point. We're going to look at Victor Vasarely. He did these ones that are kind of like boom, big bumps. And we're going to create our own optical illusion using waves. Okay, so it's kind of a building up process. For this project, you need an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper, you need a ruler, and you need a pencil. Now, mine is actually a little smaller than 8.5 by 11 because I wanted you guys to be able to see as much of it as possible on the screen. So first, your paper needs to be landscape or horizontal like this. And what we're going to do is we need to draw some lines with our ruler. Okay, and we need to draw 5 lines. They need to go up and down. But we don't want to go straight. We're going to go at a slight angle. And remember, draw it light until you've got it right. So I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. I think this one's going to go right to the corner. 5. Okay, so now we have our lines, and here is where the measuring begins. We need to make a mark every 1 inch on the side of our paper. Now, since our paper is 8.5 this way, that means we're going to be making 8 marks, and then you're just going to have a 1/2 inch left over. Okay, so I'm going to go this way and make a mark every inch. Now remember, mine's a different size, so I'm going to end up with fewer marks than you are. Okay, and then I also have to do that on the other side of my paper. Just little baby marks. You don't want anything too big because you might end up having to erase. So as you can see, I also have that little 1/2 inch box down there. That is just fine. So that was pretty easy peasy. Now we have to make the marks on these lines. So to make the marks on these lines, you just have to line up with that line that you did. And you need to make your mark every 1 inch again. And you're going to do that on every single line. Now we need to add the waves, and this is where you really have to be paying attention to what you're doing. Okay, I'm going to start with my top wave. So I'm going to start with a bump that goes up. Okay, so I'm going to start from this point right here on the edge, right where my mark is, and I'm going to curve it up and hit where that mark is. All right, I could go higher if I wanted to. I shouldn't go any lower than that though, because then it's going to be a little bit too flat to be considered a wave. All right, now this next one needs to go down and hit that line. So I'm going to go down and hit that mark, and then I'm going to go back up again, hit that mark. Try to go the same height all the way along. Oh, looks like I hit the mark, but I didn't hit the line, so I have to go back and erase. Gotta fix that. I went a little too far over. This is why we draw it light until we've got it right. That's a big wave, and then this is just a little itty bitty wave. Okay, now I'm going to do that for every single one all the way down, and you make sure that you're going the same direction, about the same height. Okay, and then back down again, all the way along, all the way down. All right, so I've gotten to my edge, and I've just got like this little teeny tiny baby bump right here, so I'm just going to do a little guy. This one, it's going to go down below the bottom of the page, and that is just fine. All right, so I'm just going to go like that. Little baby bump again. This one's going to go a little bit, probably I'll just hit the edge like that. Little bump. And then this one will just hit the edge like that. Now, looking at this, it looks like up here, I could probably put in just like a little fake bump there, because that's just such a large space. So I've got that happening here too. I'll put just like another little fake bump and another little fake bump. That way it looks like it keeps going off the page. So we are now done. So if you have marks like I do, like right here, that are kind of hovering out by themselves, you can erase them. If your marks were really long, I would erase those too. But now we are going to start coloring. For this project, we're going to be using colored pencils, and you need at least 3 colors, okay? So if you want to go with more, like if you want to do a rainbow like you'll see in your examples, you can. You can't do less than 3 though, okay? But that's not to say you can't do different values of the same color. So for example, these count as 2 colors even though they're both blue. Okay, so I'm going to do the 3 warm colors here, and I suggest that you start with one that's a complete one. Like, don't start with this guy or this guy or this guy. All right, now here comes the tricky part. When you color, you can't color straight. You have to color with the curve. So you'll see me turn my paper because it's easier because of my wrist. It's easier for me to curve this direction. It's hard for me to curve this way. That might be different for you. Everybody's going to find their own drawing style, okay? But for this, you have to color lightly. That means you're barely pushing, because we got to add some values in here, okay? So I'm going to color lightly this way. Remember, neatness counts. So these little curves, they're easier because you don't have much to go. But these bigger curves, they can be a little bit trickier. All right, so then I'm going to curve this way. And if you want to just do like a half and then do the other half, that's just fine. Make sure you're following the curves of your lines, because if you don't, it's just going to flatten it out. And our goal is to fool people into thinking it's 3D. Now, I could flip my paper and do that one, but while my paper's this direction, I think I'm just going to finish up this row. Remember, we're pushing lightly, and you'll see why in a second here. I'm going to keep going all the way across. I'm going to finish this row with red, all right? And then I think I'll do orange, yellow, red, orange, yellow, and do the whole pattern. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to have to shade. So as you can see, I actually decided to go red, orange, yellow, orange, red, orange. And now that I have my pattern figured out, it's actually a lot easier if I just stick with one color and keep doing the pattern all the way. You just have to be very careful that you don't accidentally color it in the wrong spot. Okay, so when I get to these guys, I still have to follow that curve. So I kind of have to go off the edge a little bit. So if you want to put a piece of paper or something underneath so that you're not coloring on your table, that's just fine. Just make sure that you're following the curve. All right, so you might already be able to start to see like the fooling of the eye. And now we're gonna add some shadows. So that is gonna make it even more noticeable. I'm gonna start with my red. Yellow is actually kind of hard. So when we get there, I'm gonna walk you through some like tips and tricks for that one. But we've colored hard, now we have to color medium, or I'm sorry, we've colored light, now we have to color medium and hard. So light, medium, hard. And if you want, you can just flip your paper over and practice on the back until you kind of got that down. But we are gonna start with our medium. So I'm gonna actually start on a bigger curve so it's easier for you to see. You're gonna go about 1/3 of the way. So like if you look at this, that's about 1/3, the curve broken into thirds. So I'm gonna color that curve again, just pushing a little bit harder. And you'll notice I'm kind of doing an uneven edge. That's so it doesn't look like it's nice and straight, solid cut. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with 1/3 on this side. And you wanna make sure that you don't have like a white or a light halo right there. So I kind of just go back in just a little bit right there, straight up and down the line. So we've got the mediums in. Now I need to do the hards. So half of that is gonna be dark. So I'm gonna push nice and hard, like this, half of this. All right, there we go. So I've got a light, a medium, and a dark. And so what that's gonna do is the more we do it all the way down, it's gonna make it look like the edges kind of are falling down into space. And that is what we are using for our op art. We are fooling the eye with that. If you don't curve your shadows, like sometimes people will go like this, no, that won't work. You actually have to curve the shadows. So I'm gonna turn my paper and show you what it looks like on a smaller one. So my 3rd mark here, you don't have to put these marks, I'm just putting them there for it's easier for you to see what I'm talking about, 1/3. All right, and then I've got my dark is half of that 1/3, or a 1/6 as your math teachers would say. So 1/3 of the curve is medium, and half of that is dark. Okay, so we've got light, medium, dark, and you do that all the way across. So I'm gonna finish this curve, and then when I get to my next yellow curve, I am going to show you how to do it with yellow or those lighter colors. All right, so I have my reds done, and you'll notice you don't shade on the edge of the paper, just where it touches one of those 5 lines that we drew. So now I'm gonna jump in with my yellow. Now yellow's already a pretty light color, so it might be kind of hard for me to get my mediums and my darks. If you want, you can use a different yellow when you get to those. So like I have 2 different yellows here, but you don't have to. I'm gonna show you a couple little tricks here. So for my medium, I'm pushing just a teensy tiny bit harder. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you're coloring really light when you color with your yellow, or else you might not be able to get any shadows in there, okay? And then I'm gonna push just super duper hard without, tearing my paper. To get those shadows. Now, I'm going back in, and you'll notice I'm making kind of my mediums a little bit darker, because now that I know that that's as dark as my dark can go, I know that my mediums can go a little bit darker. It all depends on how you color those lights. That's gonna tell you. But let's say that's not gonna work for you. So you've got your light and your medium and your dark. Okay, what you could do is you could take one of those other yellows or those tans and kind of lightly color on top like that. So that'll make them look a little darker. If you don't have a yellow or a tan, you could try a brown. So I'll do that again. I've got my light, a medium, and a dark. So I'll just go on top with my brown ever so slightly. Like I'm barely even coloring lightly. And that will help darken that too. All right, and don't lose that brown, because when we get to our shadows, we have one more shadow after we're done with this, and that's the black and the brown shadow. We are gonna need that, okay? So I'm gonna finish up my curves and my shadows here, and then I will show you the last step for our shading. All right, so now that I've got my normal shading done, I'm gonna go in and do the darkest darks. Now, some of you might wanna use black and some of you might wanna use a brown or maybe like a dark brown. You can practice on the back to see what works best. For mine, I think I'm gonna at least start with brown because with my warm colors, I think that the brown's gonna work better. Now, we're not pushing hard with this. We are pushing lightly. So I'm gonna just start up here with my red. So I'm gonna give myself my line so that I know where I am. And it's just gonna kind of be half of your dark red. And all this is doing is it's making that one spot just a bit darker. And you might have to push harder if you pushed really hard. It depends on what brand of colored pencil you had. And if you find that, you know what, I want that to go darker, I could go in here with my dark browns. I could go in here with my black, but I am just gonna start with brown. And actually, I think I might even have a darker brown, so I can show you what that might look like there. All right, so, and I've got to make sure that I'm still following that curve, okay? And when it comes to your different, oh, it looks like I might not have done a dark there. I'll have to pop back in here. This is where you start realizing like, oh, I missed this spot and that kind of stuff. So there we go. Got my dark in there. Now, when you have your super duper small guys like this, you might barely even do anything there. Just doing like a little one. A lot of times what I end up seeing though is that people zigzag across the line. That's not going to work because you've got to make sure that you're curving it even just the slightest amount. Okay, the human eye is going to notice the difference. So you're just going to do that for all of them and then you're done.